Jaxon Guerin, welcome to Not Your Thoughts.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very grateful to be on the podcast today. You know, change it up. Something not fitness associated, which is good. You know, it's always good to change it up, you know. So I like the variety. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah, I try to dive into the ethics and the morals behind someone's drive. So I'm keen to kind of see how Jaxon came to be.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I have to fight the urge every time I see your name in writing to say Jaxon.
I know.
Because of the X.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, it's funny. I am French as well because the last name Guerin. So it's actually Guerin, but like it's Guerin. Then people say Guerin. I'm just like, it's not that. It's not Guerin. It's
so I
Guerin.
nailed it. Oh, shit.
Yeah, so you nailed it. Yeah, it's good.
I had no idea there was any French element either.
Yeah, French and Dutch. So it's a bit of a weird mix, but it's good. So yeah.
That's mum, dad, or it gets a bit further?
Yeah. Dad's like my grandfather's like full French, and then my dad is like half French, but he wasn't born over there. He was born here.
Yeah.
But he lived there for like 5 years or something. I forgot. But
Yeah.
he's lived there a lot. And then my mum, my grandmother, so her mother is full Dutch from Holland. So it's sort of like, yes, I'm technically WOG, but I'm not. Like, it's not like my fiance where she's like full Sicilian. She speaks Italian first.
Yeah.
So
I did. Have you tried the DNA test or thought about getting
I'd like
into that?
to. I'd definitely like to. I know that my mother did it, and she connected with some very individual people, like people I would never expect for us to be related to. Like one of them was like Asian.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Someone
So
was
it was
on
interesting.
someone was on a bit of a endeavour.
I know, for sure. That ancestry stuff is really cool. Like I would like to do it, but I'm not sure how much testing you need to get done. So it seems like a very arduous process, but it seems really cool though.
It was relatively quick. I did the 23andMe. You literally just slobber in a tube and you just send it off, and then it comes back. They're not cheap though, I'll say that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was bullshit. So I got 7% Sicilian and like 2% Greek, but it was a Cypriotic. I feel cool saying that now.
What's the majority?
Lebanese, Syrian.
Wow.
Or they called it Levantine.
Yeah.
And a lot more Turk than I thought
Okay.
I'd get. Yeah, so that one threw me
Interesting.
off.
Wow.
And I thought it was bullshit, but then a cousin of mine did it as well. And there's a Find My Family feature.
Yeah.
And it said, this person is your first cousin and very likely related by mothers, and our mums are sisters. Yeah.
Oh, what?
So when I
that's
seen that, I'm like,
mad.
all right, this is pretty
That's cool.
pretty legit.
Yeah. Especially if you've got a big family too.
Yeah.
Like, and you're not in touch with them. Like different. Like I've a very big family due to my grandfather, my dad's side, but they're all very close. So I know who they all are. But on the other hand, my mum. It's getting a bit personal. I probably shouldn't say too much. But,
We can edit.
no, it's fine. I know for a fact that she has half siblings as well. So and then she found out a lot of extended family and stuff, and like
through
through ancestry and everything. Like because at one point she was like, oh, you know, like I think your auntie, like she might have a different dad, and then like apparently it was true, but like they were talking about it for like decades because they don't look alike at all.
Yeah.
And I love my auntie; she's great. And yeah, I was just like, holy shit,
That is crazy, man.
Yeah, so like, I personally wouldn't want to hear that because I look completely different to my brother. But I know
You're
for
like,
a fact,
wait a minute.
I know for a fact, don't. My parents are my parents. So yeah, it's interesting stuff for sure. Yeah, for sure.
We're in a different time, man. The fact that we even have these options is just boggling.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just commercial. It's just like, oh yeah, have you tried your DNA test? Like it's just in the conversation.
No, like you didn't have that like 30, 40 years ago. Now you do, which is great. Yeah, science has come a long way for sure. With a lot of things, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Now, I wanted to kind of tackle this truthfully as an idiot.
yeah, go for it.
So can you help me understand, I guess, the structure of the competitions?
Yeah.
Because I see the term
IFBB.
IFBB.
Yeah.
Sorry?
IFBB. So
IFBB?
International Federation of Bodybuilding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then because there's a jiu-jitsu one which I always mistake it with. That's my excuse.
Imagine that bunch of jacked fighters walking around like that's
Hey,
scary.
they are there, man.
Yeah.
Is the ultimate goal for everyone Mr. Olympia? Is that the pinnacle of the bodybuilding?
Yeah, for sure. So like, you have your different classes. You have like, in men's, you've got men's physique, Classic Physique, which I'm in, and then also men's open bodybuilding, and also 212, which is like a downsized version of open bodybuilding. It's like a weight cap, but essentially there is a Olympia title for every single person that wins the Olympia in that given class. But obviously in bodybuilding, open bodybuilding, that's the pinnacle of the sport. That's like the number one thing. So, you know, you've probably seen a lot of people like, I don't know, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and like Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler. And then, you know, now with the classic division, you've got, you know, like Chris Bumstead and like Breon Ansley, who won it before that. Even like men's physique, you had like Jeremy Buendia back in the day, then Ryan Terry and Brandon Hendrickson. So like a lot of these athletes, they're basically at the pinnacle of what they do. And they originally brought in multiple classes like men's physique, which is board shorts, and classic and bodybuilding almost as like a sort of like a system where you can keep improving. So it's like, you know, if you have like a beach body or you're in fairly good shape, you know, you start off in men's physique. You know,
so what are the distinctions between the classes?
So essentially, like men's physique is like you wear board shorts. You have obviously like a good amount of muscularity, incredibly conditioned, but not as much muscularity as someone in classic, for example. So in classic now, it's almost like a downsized bodybuilder, but someone with a very small waist, wide shoulders, a lot bigger, a bit leaner, about the same conditioning as a guy in men's physique. But the difference is they have a lot larger legs. And then obviously going up to bodybuilding is like the pinnacle. It's like maximum muscularity, maximum conditioning, shredded like to the bone.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how the division's sort of made up. But look, some people are more suited for a division than another. So for example, like I'm more suited for something like classic physique rather than open bodybuilding. Like,
Wait, really?
yeah. So
You're not, no?
nah, bro. So like a lot of if you met like an actual IFBB Pro bodybuilder that's my height, they'd have at least 20 kilos on me. I'm 130 kilos right now, but they're walking around like 150, 160, like, and they're coming in like 130 kilos on stage shredded. Like that's me on a peak off season. So big difference. Like most of the time, if you look at like a off season bodybuilder that's not shredded versus like a competitor on stage, it looks pretty identical to most people because you're just looking at the muscularity. Then once you start following, if you're a more avid follower of the sport, then you start saying, okay, this guy's conditioned, this guy's not, this guy's doing guest posing, this guy's actually on stage to compete. So it's a very interesting sport because it's all subjective. It's all on how you look.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Yeah. So even by definition, is it almost subjective what category you're going to?
Always. Because at the end of the day, like if you are the best, if you look the best on the day compared to everyone else, you win. But at the end of the day, it's like you can still not fit the criteria, if that makes sense. So for example, if, you know, there's 20 bodybuilders on stage and you're just the one that looks the best, you win. But at the end of the day, it's like you can still not fit the category. So that's why the better you get at this sport, and, you know, once you obviously, you know, compete in NPC, which is the amateur version of IFBB that we have here and in America, once you compete, you know, you get your feedback from judges. You say, okay, well, you know, I need more muscle, or I need to get lean. I need to maybe switch to this class because I'm more suited for it structure-wise, because there's a lot of factors that go into how you look. So, for example, you know, like bone length. So, for example, like if I have a short torso, long legs, like that's going to favor me in something maybe more like classic rather than open bodybuilding, where if I'm a bit shorter, I can fill out a lot faster and compete in like open bodybuilding, for example, because also too, my muscle fibers are shorter. So that means I can grow actually a lot better. So that's why taller guys need to fill out. So for example, that's why, you know, in the sport, it's very subjective. So it's all based upon how you look. So it's very interesting because once you follow this sport more and more, you get a good eye of like, okay, this person's going to win first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc.
And there's like a performance happening as well, and you kind of need to lean into that as well, because I saw your performance, and man, it was so artistic, and there was the flow happening, and is that all accounted in their judgment as well?
No. So a posing routine doesn't get judged. So
interesting.
Essentially, you have essentially quadrants of like when they get on stage and when they pose, and then that's how they sort of regulate the placing. So essentially, from that, when everyone walks out, you have like, you know, your front relax, and then you do your quarter turn. So that's like a symmetry round. So essentially they're looking at how symmetrical the muscles are, your structure, how you look as well, conditioning wise.
Does that include abs? Because abs can be jagged and wide.
For sure.
You're just bound to lose if you don't have.
So a lot of the time it's, like also too, you can have the biggest muscle, but if it's not shaped how it should be according to the criteria, it might not matter. So that's why, like, when it comes down to that symmetry and conditioning round, like it's going to really just depend on how you look.
Yeah, but
So,
as is it? I'm assuming it's as symmetrical as your body can be with your genetics,
100%.
right? It's not. It's not. This guy's got jagged abs. He's a more straight. Jagged abs will never win.
Not always. Like,
know what I mean?
it's an overall look. So, for example, like if you have like a lagging muscle group and everything else, but it looks you look welly put together, it's not going to be an issue. But when it comes to, for example, let's say, two guys are on stage and they both are just as lean, just as muscular, they're going to start picking apart who has more weaknesses. So it's almost like a reverse engineering system, because it's like, we can label everything great about athlete A and athlete B on stage. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, okay, if this person wins a majority of poses and they look better in those poses, they're going to win. So the system that they've made is very, very straightforward. But to explain it to people, it takes some time.
Yeah. No, you've done well with that.
Nah, thank you.
So I'm understanding. So then the routine itself is, I guess, what I'm understanding is you're kind of becoming. So it's for the crowd as well.
100%.
Yeah, but then two, is it by doing something like that, are you showcasing a muscle that the normal posers wouldn't basically?
Yeah, sometimes you do, because in bodybuilding you have 8 poses. So you got this is in the muscularity round. So you got front double bicep, front lat spread, side chest, side tricep, back double bicep, back lat spread, most muscular, and your ab and thigh. Yeah. And then when it comes to classic physique, you've only got front double bicep, side chest, back double bicep, ab and thigh, classic pose of choice. So there's only 5. Okay. So for example, it's like, when you see like C-Bum hit that front lat spread, that's a bodybuilding pose. But it looks great on him, but it's not in the criteria. So it's just good to throw it in when you do a routine.
Yeah. Are you trying to get or do you have like a signature move yourself? Is it smart to kind of create a...
well, everyone has their own different niche. But for me, because I did ballet for 6 years, so my ability to do lunging and stuff on the floor is very good. And surprisingly not bad for being 130 kilos.
Well played.
But, I do essentially a lunging pose. It's like an Icarus pose. So essentially it's been around for a long time, but a lot of people don't do it because kneeling poses, they take a lot of work. So, and also too, man, because when you're not getting marked on the free posing routine. So essentially some people don't really care about it, which makes sense. But especially in my category in classic physique, it's a bit more artistic, and you're showing off the old school bodybuilding, originality of what it was.
It's just like an appreciation almost.
Yeah. And so that's why for me, I'm also very big on being an entertainer for people. People pay money to watch these shows. True. You want to put on a show for people because, when you go and watch your first pro bodybuilding show, you'll never forget it. Yeah. And when you see some of the best guys in the world going at it, it's mind blowing. You see these guys and you just this is incredible. It's something that if you've never been to a pro bodybuilding show, which there's none in Australia, but even if you're
not what you
no. So I compete in an amateur show to win my pro card. So now I can compete in a pro level. So
in the US,
there's US, Europe, Asia. Yeah, we did have the Arnold's here, but we don't have it here anymore, which sucks. I love that.
It's a massive. There's a massive demographic here that would love that. I'm surprised.
Yeah, there's just not enough. I just don't think. Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that, but. Yeah, it would be good to have it back one day, for sure. Because I remember I used to go to those Arnold's when I was a teenager, and it was incredible. I used to see all the pro bodybuilders and pro classic guys compete. It was just incredible.
Yeah, he used to do his shows, not shows. Yeah, he has the I don't know if he still does. It was was it a show? It was the Arnold something.
The Arnold Classic, yeah.
Oh, is that it? Sorry, I've been to that actually. Yeah. And there was the stands and
the expo. So that's the expo, and then you've got at the plenary at the convention center, in the plenary, the actual theater, the pro show.
Yes,
and you got to fork out at least 100, I think it's 60 to $100 for a ticket, but it's amazing. Yeah, it's one of the best things you'll ever do.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Is it a lonely sport? Is there a community element to it?
There's a massive community behind it because it's fitness, but competing wise, if you don't have many friends that are doing the same show as you, most of the time it's all yourself.
Yeah.
But everyone has a different mentality approaching prep. When you get ready for a show, for me, I'm very based upon the premise of like, I don't really do this alone because there's a lot of people behind the scenes that help me out and that are always there for me. And, you know, that always are like great supporters to me, like my village of people. So I think some people are very like, oh, you know, it's a very solo sport. But for me, look, the work that's required, yes, it's all up to you, but the individuals around you that support you, I think it's not a lonely sport.
Yeah,
so that's
creates
why I
the
love
network.
that's why I love doing it so much. Well, it's not even networking; it's just being around people that will support you for who you are, you know, and they're always willing to help you. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, you know, no one, in my opinion, is ever self-made. So I find that, you know, looking at I guess in a sense, like, you know, even though again it is a selfish sport to an extent, like I find that having the help from people really pushes you further as an athlete and as a person.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you can try and do it all yourself, but at the end of the day, it's just not going to work. You're going to burn yourself out. So, you know, and that's why too, I think as an athlete, like understanding that, like, yes, you are on stage yourself, but behind you is just so many people that have helped you behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So
when you say help, are we talking moral support or accessibility support? Because
bit of everything,
it is just you grabbing the weight and having your muscle rip.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's the thing. It's like a lot of people, you know, are there to aid me, whether it's like, you know, I have like sponsorships. I also have, you know, even just like friends and family, like my fiance. They've all been so helpful in helping me to get to where I am, because a lot of the time, you know, as well, like, you know, you have your highs, you have your lows, and they're with you through all of those processes. So I think, you know, regardless of the outcome, it's the people that are there from day one, the most important people. You know, it's like with anything, you know, anything that you're achieving, it's like the people that are there to support you are the real people that you want to stay around. Like, simple as that. Like, when everything works out, everyone's going to essentially, you know, be around you. But I think when it comes to, again, you know, when things don't work out, it's the people that were loyal from day one, you know? So I think, but also too, you know, not having expectations of people is a very important factor too. Like, a lot of people I know, it's like, oh, you know, this person should be supporting me. I don't know. It's like,
you don't feel that? I noticed, not that I'm in my own personal experience feeling an element of success. Yeah. The fact that the podcast exists to me is good, you know. But I've definitely noticed people's just relationships tend to change from in instances where I kind of expected more. You don't feel that expectation.
Never.
No.
So
okay.
I think, like, as a person, like for me personally, I find that whenever I was expecting things from people, I'd always be disappointed. So, for example, like, you know, if I don't have friends that reach out to me for a while, it's like I don't really get mad at that, because I know that people have their own life to deal with. So for me, and also as well, you know, I was the one who always organized everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, I don't have that toxic expectation. Well, I think it's fine to have expectations from some people, but I think for me, it's always coming from gratitude. So if someone ever does anything for me just because they want to, I'm always grateful for it. I'm never like, you know, expecting a handout for someone.
Of course, yeah. But did you experience though that with your success, there were people that fell off that you didn't expect to fall off?
For sure. Okay. For sure. There were some people close to me that, you know, that I thought were close to me at the time, and, you know, they didn't really want a bar of me anymore. And I was like, well, look, that happens. Like, that's life. And
this is me.
You know, and that's okay. Yeah. Because you can get disappointed, of course. But, you know, like, I think, again, I think the very important thing about being an athlete is, you know, understand, like, you can still be someone who works hard, is like a killer, very savant mentality, but also as well, you can be in touch with your emotions as a person. So, for example, it's like, you know, I don't, for example, agree with everything that Andrew Tate says, for example, where he says, you know, you have to be stoic, you got to be emotionless. I think, in my opinion, that's weak. I personally don't agree with that. I think that being in touch with your emotions and understanding and accepting that it's going to, like, emotions change, sometimes on a spectrum. But also too, you know, work has to be done. You have to achieve things. Like, you know, you have I guess a checklist box, I guess, at the end of the day. So yeah, that's why for me it was more like, you know, if someone doesn't want to be part of my life anymore, like, I can't help that.
Yeah.
You know, and
I believe that's like a true version of stoicism, where I think we have started to misconstrue stoicism to feel nothing.
Yeah.
You're a human being. So if you're assuming you're feeling nothing, there's a process that's being inhibited. There's no flow.
Yes.
But I think what I'm hearing you say is the detachment is stoicism. You know what I mean? Which is true, I think, masculinity, you know?
Yeah, well, it's like, it's that saying, like, have you heard of like amor fati, which means like love fate?
I have heard this
Like,
one, yeah.
And where it's essentially, it's like, you know, you are happy for everything that occurs because it's always leaning you to somewhere better, in my opinion. I'm a very half glass full type of individual. You know, I'm a Catholic, I'm a very religious person. So I'm a very, very positive optimist. I used to be a very big pessimist and realist and didn't work out for me. So I think that when it comes to, you know, just sort of the way when you're dealt curveballs or any sort of obstacle, like it's necessary. It's going to happen.
Including
like,
the emotions that come with it.
Always.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of people look sometimes at my physique and say, oh, you know, like I could be that big if I, you know, took this or I did that. And, you know, if I ate 6 meals a day, it's like, well, not always, because, you know, I think a lot of people, when push comes to shove, most people don't want to do something.
And why aren't you then?
Exactly.
You know?
Always. I'm like, well, why aren't you?
Yeah,
why aren't you 130 kilos?
Yeah.
You know, so that's why, again, you know, if I ever look at someone that's massive and jacked out of their mind, I always have respect for those people, you know, and even respect for people who work very hard and they're very family based. Even people who make a lot of money. It's like, regardless of what they do, it's like they've worked hard.
Yeah.
You know, so I think anything worthwhile doesn't come easy. So that's why, especially with prep, it's, you know, like when you see someone, you know, when you have like shredded glutes and like you're incredibly ripped, like you have abs all over yourself, even on your ass and stuff, like it's a very, it's a lot of work. You know, you can't buy it, you can't rent it, you can't loan it, you can't do anything. You have to work for it. So, and that's the thing where I always look at people and I have utmost respect for people as well who work hard. So, but it's enjoying the process. Being a very process-driven individual will always drive you further than to the goal. So, every time, because, you know, after I won, so I did 2 shows started this year because you have to do a state show to qualify for nationals. Okay. And when I did the state show, I won the overall, and then I won every class. I won every class I competed in. So I got 8 first places that day, or 7 or something. And 8. Wow. And and after that day, well, I didn't expect that to happen. But the day after, I was about to pull out and not compete in the next show to go for my pro card.
To end on a high.
Well, I didn't want to think about winning. I just didn't want to think about that. Okay. Like, it's not about that for me. It's always about enjoying the process. Okay. And it's like, if I'm good at something, I'll do it. But I'm not driven by an end goal. I'm always driven by how the lessons I can learn from going through something, and also too the way I can develop myself and the character. So if I've ever
what's your reward system then? If it's not like what
progress?
Okay,
always progress.
Yeah, all right.
It's never perfection. Like, interesting. You can't, like, you know, well, because 7 years ago when I started this sport, I looked at all these guys who, you know, even like top level amateurs, not even pros, and I'm like, damn, if I looked like that, I'd be like happy. I've got that. Yeah. Like, am I satisfied? No. But is that a bad thing? No. So I think hunger, exactly. And so I think it's like, you know, and that's why the day after that state show, I wanted to pull out, because I was just thinking about winning the nationals, and I'm like, I don't want to think about that. I want to enjoy this process. If I wake up 3 days in a row and I don't enjoy the process anymore, I'm just thinking about winning, I'm done competing. And so I technically pulled out. I don't tell people this. I pulled out for 3 days after, but I still followed my diet, still did my cardio, still trained. And on the 4th day, I'm like, I love doing this. Like, I really enjoy this. You know, I'm very present. I'm very present. I feel at ease with what I'm doing, and it's just something I love. So from there, I kept competing. Yeah.
And the process of actually pulling out let you step back and be like, wait, I do want this.
Exactly.
You know,
and that's
instead of going in,
in,
if you kept going, you'd have another alternate reality thought of, fuck, I don't want to do this.
Exactly.
But that pullback allowed you to go, this is it.
Because when people say, you know, like, I want to make $1 million, it's like, well, why? And then people say, oh, you know, I'd just be good, have a lot of money. And I'm like, no, but why though? Like,
because Andrew Tate said so.
And, you know, so this is the thing. It's like, well, if you want to make a lot of money because you want to spend time with your family and give back to other people, that makes sense. So having a superficial goal, goal is obviously never going, it lacks intrinsic value. So like, you know, when I also played very high level football, like, you know, like state level football. And I wanted to play AFL when I was younger. And essentially when we were learning this kind of stuff, and also in high school, we learned about extrinsic value and intrinsic value. I'll just do it there. Extrinsic value and intrinsic value, where Extrinsic value, you are driven from an outside purpose. So, for example, people telling you to do something, you do it, or out of sort of any superficial feeling. It's not always a bad thing. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, they were always like that. They're very like, I'm going to prove you wrong mentality.
Yeah.
And then compared to an intrinsic value, it's something that's more deep and meaningful and sort of resonates more with your why, which in my opinion, for most sports, outweighs extrinsic value. When it's performance-based, it can be both, but something like bodybuilding, it has to be intrinsic. If it's extrinsic, it's like, I want to be shredded. I want to win a pro card. I want to be a national level champion. I want to win this class. I want to win the overall because I can be the most jacked guy and I can be the most shredded guy. So I can walk down the beach and get girls. It's very extrinsic value. If that drives you to do something, that's fine, but it's not going to last long term.
It's a bottomless well. Yeah.
Exactly, because it's very finite. So that's why too, I'm always talk about in every podcast, I don't know how come I always relate to it. It's like this why, where essentially I have this why, this like life mission. And that means that I can detach myself very quickly from what I do and move into something else that still has the same why attached to it. So for example, it's like with bodybuilding, it's like the reason why I love to do bodybuilding is because in fitness, I like to help people. My why is I want to always help people. So that can lead me into different avenues in my life. Eventually, once, my body is old and withered, I can't compete anymore. I still train, but, that will move me into a different career and area in my life where I want to excel at because I want to help people. So, things like that, it's very important because it will take you a lot further than what your given destination is. So that's why for me, I don't look at like the next, 1 to 2 years, what am I going to be doing then? And, I'm just more like, okay, well, like I just want to enjoy the process. I want to help people along the way, and that's all I can do.
Yeah. So you're zooming out, or you're more zooming in and saying, is this still aligned with my why?
But still looking at the bigger picture.
And then still looking at the bigger picture. Do you ever feel a sense of anxiety to maintain the physique and stay on top? Is there kind of like, now that you did win and you kind of are on top, is there this, they're always behind you feeling?
Yes and no. At first, of course, like becoming an IFBB Pro is no small feat. Like what I did was essentially like the percentile of becoming an IFBB Pro in any category, it's like less than 1% in Australia. It's very, very difficult. And for a period of time, I had like imposter syndrome. And I'm like, am I a pro? Did I really deserve it? Of course I knew that, when I won, it was unanimous. 9 out of the 9 judges favored me to become a pro. So I knew straight away, like, okay, that's physically that's solidified, but it's more mentally for me. So
that's when you do need kind of the extrinsic value of yes, intrinsic why, but is it extrinsic? Is that the word? Extrinsically. Yeah. Extrinsically, you still need data to be given from the world to you to recalibrate as well.
Exactly, because if you have a believed perception of yourself and everyone has something otherwise, you're just delusional.
Sometimes.
So,
and that's probably question that.
Exactly. Well, it's like, that's why I really like Jordan Peterson, because it's like, your actions are a lot more important than also your words. Robert Greene also explains in 48 Laws to Power, the way you speak is very important, because if you are poor with words, you will be disrespected, and you deserve that, which makes sense. So essentially the way that you use language to communicate with people is very important. And I realized that a couple of years ago. So that's why when people say, oh, you speak really well and all that kind of stuff, because, the way I converse with people is very important, because if I use improper use of language, it's, again, we're getting on a bit of a different path from here, but, just the way I embody myself as a person is very important.
100%.
So, trying to be a good role model for younger people, not telling people to do dumb stuff, and also to explaining like my past mistakes so people don't need to encounter those issues as well is very important. And also too, just the way being like respectful, treat people with respect.
Yeah.
So I'm a very according person.
No, I'm big on that, man. Specifically the word thing. I feel like once you start to it's because you're manifesting with your intentions as well. Whatever your intentions are, you can start to actually get the words out as accurately as you can.
For sure.
And that's how humans interface as well.
Yeah.
So I just feel like having strong words, and I'm about to butcher every word after that because I just made a claim about strong words. Yeah. But really, don't do this. My brain's going to make me blank out. I don't know. It really feels like that's going to set you on your pathway. Like I know so many people, but it's also, it's an not intelligence thing as well, but some people it's just out of their control to not have the ability to even be interested in words.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you kind of to some degree don't control the fact that you're interested in words.
Yeah.
And like to strengthen the words and like to strengthen who you are. You know what I mean? So I try to be cognizant of, as well of people who just aren't big on it. And anyway, that was bad words.
It's fine, for sure. Yeah. The way we explain things to people is a very important factor. So that's why I think the way we use language and interpret it to communicate to people is very important. Because in this day and age, people use slang language all the time, like all that brain rot stuff. Like it's pretty funny, you know, but
it's funny till it's not. Like
exactly, because consistently a lot of people actually don't work on their use of language. So, you know, behind the scenes, I'm just a very like average chill person. I'll just like, you know, sort of speak a bit like this and like, whatever, you know, like all that kind of stuff. But when I'm actually talking to explain information and points and the way I believe the identity of myself, well, not the identity, the way I carry myself is very important. I want people to clearly understand that. So, you know, I don't try to get caught up in words of obviously that I don't know, but also to just understanding, like people, when they watch, for example, or listen to a podcast, they know what I'm talking about. So that's why, you know, I did public speaking for a period of time. So that really did help as well, standing a lot in front of people. But, you know, I think learning to convey a clear message is very important because the way you talk dictates 95% of everything in your life.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that was a part of Jordan Peterson's come up as well, was he was saying these things that most of us were like, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'm like, that.
And that's the way that tendencies are occurred.
Yeah,
exactly. And understanding the psychological psyche of the way the brain works and the reason and incentives of why we do things because of certain stimulus. So that's, it's a very important thing. You pretty much hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. And I read, I'm reading a book on psychology. Well, I've been reading it for like 3 years. I'm only up like 2 chapters in, like because it's one of them ones. I'll read, I'll shut it. I'm like, what the fuck did I just read? And then I need to like process it. But he was explaining that the part of your brain, I think it's Broca's or Wernicke's, the speech part of your mind is actually next to the grasping part of your mind, which is in the left hemisphere, which is why most of us are right-handed because it's across. But it's a form of like, speaking as well is a form of abstracting what's implicit and meaningful and being able to manipulate it in the real world as well. Because that's what we're doing. We're manipulating things which are metaphors for things in the way we're speaking. You know? So it's fucking mind-blowing in that regard. But sorry, just to bring it back though, because I appreciate what you're saying, but where did your point land on the actual anxiety element of it?
Well, you know, for a period of time, you know, I believe that I had to uphold obviously a certain type of physique when, you know, I'm growing or when I'm prepping. But at the end of the day, for me, it's just as long as I keep improving, that's all I'm happy with. So again, having not having a finite mindset where there's a set goal, it's, you know, sort of just saying, okay, well, how can I get better? Simple as that. And that's why with training, with my nutrition, with my recovery, with, you know, anything, you know, involved within the aspect of bodybuilding, I try to improve on. So as long as I can just improve as an athlete, I'm happy.
I understand that. Sorry. And that's linked to what you were saying about I guess you're able to, I appreciate the language, not identify, like you change identities in a good way. I mean, like that way you're not identifying with winner. And that way and the eventual when, because we're all going to die, when you're not a winner, it's not like, oh no, I've lost my being, everything that defined me.
Like at the end of the day, you know, this is why, you know, Jim Carrey talked about this explanation interview, explaining how he, you know, brought the idea of, I hope everyone can achieve their goals and all their dreams because it's not what you actually desire. You know, because it doesn't make you feel complete. So when I look at whenever I achieve something, because we all look at to achieve status, money, we like to, you know, do incredible things. which is great because it allows us to drive forward and to achieve something because we are goal-driven individuals. We're creatures of habit.
Civilization as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think, if it lacks that intrinsic value, it's going to be very superficial. So that's why, I look back on the people that were there to support me when I won. That's what made it amazing. Because if I won and there was no one there to support me, yeah, it's great, but
what are you sharing?
Exactly. You're not sharing it with anyone.
Yeah.
So, and this is why you don't need to enter this hidey hole where, you cut people away and say, oh, I'm working on myself. And, there's times where, of course, you are going to be by yourself working towards a goal, of course, like we previously said at the start of this interview, like essentially where, it's, again, you have to share this with people because as humans, we are social creatures. Yeah. And when we lack social interaction, it's physically unhealthy on us, like physically, not just mentally. So, and that's why it's important because, for a few months, I was just focusing on, I was just training, I was just dieting, I was just doing my thing. And, I was enjoying it. But after a period of time, I'm like, I really miss my friends. Like, I don't know why I don't feel complete. I just want to hang out with my friends and just feel like a normal person.
Nice,
Instead of being like, oh, Jaxon's like the pro bodybuilder and, like I didn't give a shit about that. I don't care about that. I care about just being me and just enjoying my life and being a good person and also being a good athlete. That's all I care about, So, and I think that's why as, in this day and age, it's like why also social media, it's the worst because people put up what others want to see. They put up the highlights.
It's like a negative feedback loop.
Like, and I like posting my failures a lot. I like posting the times where, and documenting the periods of time where I do not feel okay, and that's normal. So that's why, again, it's good to have this mentality of being a savant and working hard towards your goals and, being incredibly, tenacious, but also at the same time having a side of yourself, that sort of feminine energy where you can still be at peace with yourself, but also to be in touch with your emotions. Because, for example, I think that everyone explains, what is the epitome of a man? Like, what is the epitome of what a man should be? And I think it's based upon being the perfect father, being someone who's also a scholar and an athlete. So you're consistently learning to become better. You're a family man, and also you're an athlete. Those are three very important factors of your lifestyle because, I think if we master those three pillars in our life, that will really help increase your quality of living as a person. So, because you see people walking around, a lot of people are out of shape or they have a lot of money, but they're very depressed with themselves, or they have a great family, but they're not working on themselves, very unfit and out of shape. And I think it is hard to juggle a lot of these different pillars of requirements of what it is to be a good person, a good man, or a good individual. But I think, it's not impossible.
Yeah.
So that's why I always was very big on the premise of like, before you become a good athlete, be a good person.
Yeah.
Don't be good, do good.
Don't be good, do good. And by default, you will be good.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, and the family man element as well, that kind of it just grows into community as well, which is like the building blocks of literally our society.
For sure.
So if you are in that like hyper selfish mode, how are we meant to operate with each other in the world?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah.
But did you ever, and I'm about to ask because I feel I do this, did you start hiding behind the bodybuilding as a tool to kind of check out? Because I'm kind of doing that sometimes, but I mean it and I love what I'm doing and I don't have the time sometimes. Or you can always make the time, but there's times now where I'm like, I can't podcast. You know what I mean? Or I can't. I'm editing, which I really am. But now I personally don't know how to gauge when it's authentic or when I'm using it as a cop-out to say, this is my thing. I need to do this. But it's like, do you have a way to measure that for yourself?
Not really. Like, I don't identify with being a pro bodybuilder. Like, I'm just someone who loves to train. So that's why, again, I love progress and I love being better than what I was yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and also too, being a Catholic. Like, I've made an oath to God that I will be a good person and do good. And also I will enjoy the process and the journey that I'm on of life, so not just a given career or sort of the way I, conduct myself in work. I think the way I am as a person is very important. So again, I'm someone who I always said to my fiance, I always say to her, I always explain this to her a lot about how I never want to be a one-dimensional person. So that means that I'm sort of caught within this, I guess, contingency of that I'm, just a pro bodybuilder, because I'm not. Yeah. So, for example, I've always been a very big on sports and being an athlete, and even just someone who enjoys video games. I enjoy working. I enjoy hanging out with friends. I try lots of things. Like I play golf with my like with my dad and my brother here and there.
That's awesome.
I play lots of video games with friends. So I'm still pretty unconventional, because also too, what makes you a good athlete is the way you can handle stress. So for me, I just like to do lots of fun things. Like if someone said, hey, like let's go for a 5K run, I'd be like, yeah, done.
Yeah.
But like, obviously it's not conducive with my goals of what I want right now, but I do it as a once-off. It's fun.
Yeah, it's the explorer mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. I love trying new things.
Me too. And I love being comfortable being lost.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
do you not like consistency? Do you not like sort of that Groundhog Day mentality? Are you not a fan of that?
Can you?
Where essentially like every day you do the same thing.
Does anyone like that? Oh,
yeah, I do.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
I eat the same meals. I train every set day. I do my cardio.
I love efficiency. So
For sure.
Through those pillars and through routine, I love efficiency. Yep. But I love if I'm riding my bike, I'll leave my phone and just get lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And in getting lost, I once did that, and I stumbled across this like Asian shrine place. Seriously, and I went to ask him, like, how do I get back? And it was like these, like, through being lost, and the reason I brought that up is because through being lost, I feel like that's when adventure comes in. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And grabbing on these different things all over the place.
Expecting the unexpected.
Yeah, so how does that link then? If you do, is that a contradiction? If you're saying you do like the Groundhog Day, but you do like
but I like changing it up here and there.
Yeah, exactly,
sure.
yeah.
It's really fun, so... Yeah, but I'm just not someone who takes everything so seriously. Like I see people that take everything so seriously and they just major the minors, and they end up getting so lost within the identity of what they do or what they're trying to become. They completely forget what the importance of doing that thing is. So it's like, I see people who, they just essentially become a person that they shouldn't become in the pursuit of who they want to be. But they're actually going the other way. Yeah. So that's why I'm very big on like I like to check myself a lot. Also too with like, my family and my friends. I'm very hard on myself, but I think it's something that I need because, I used to be incredibly goal driven and I was never process driven for a long time. And also too, that's because also I wasn't religious. I wasn't a child of God at the time. So for me, I found that, I was always in the self-righteous task of wanting it to be about me. And the moment I stopped making it about me, everything started working out because I found that I was committing myself to something bigger than me. So that's why too, when people say, like when I was an atheist, I met this guy who had no limbs. I forgot what his name is, a very, very famous Christian who, talks at churches and stuff. And my friend brought me one time and I wasn't really excited about it. I was like, whatever, people just freaking worship. It's like, I thought it was cult stuff.
So you're not raised in a religious household?
I'm not.
Interesting.
I was a very big atheist. Well, I wasn't a massive atheist, but I just didn't really believe in anything. And I thought, religion was like, very culty and stuff. And I wasn't big on that. So for me, on the other hand, then when I heard this guy talk about, God has given me the gift and the ability to do great things. And I'm like, bro, you got no limbs. Like, so, I was 15. I had massive ego. So,
yeah, of course.
And then, especially with bodybuilding prep, once I became a Christian, became a Catholic, my life completely changed. Like, I genuinely believe that everything that I've done since I become baptized has all been through God's work.
Okay.
So I think, like physiologically we're on this earth for a reason and we can do things. But I think that when we're required to do incredibly great things, like we need help. So that's why, again, I always think as well, I'm never alone when I prep because I've always got God there. So I'm very big on like, praying and, like reading the gospel and, like having my Bible on my side desk,
Nice,
so
man.
yeah. So I think everyone does have a different driving force behind why they do things. But for me, you know, being religious was one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. Like that, in my opinion, becoming baptized was greater than winning that show 2 weeks later.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've never heard, but it's so much more uncommon for someone to move into religion, specifically without a religious family.
Yeah.
What was your trigger? Was there a reason to move into this?
Well, at the time, you know, like, you know, my fiance and I were engaged, and, you know, we're getting married next year in June. But essentially, you know, I was like, oh, you know, I want to get married in Italy and that'd be great. And she was like, well, you know, like you got to have a Catholic wedding. And I'm like, oh, like I don't really want to. Like, I just want to get married. And she's like, well, you know, like you want to marry me. Like that's a little commitment of love to God to marry me. I'm like, fair enough. And she's like, look, like let's try Bible study together. I'm like, you know what? Let's like stuff it. Let's try.
You're like, sure, all right.
Yeah, and you know, each session, good. And I think like that over time, I became a lot more intrigued with it as well, and I was able to relate to people actually a lot, and it was a great way for me to become more present and to enjoy the process, and also too, I think with the weekly gospel, you know, it always spoke to me. It always sent me a message, and I think that's why a lot of people love being a Christian, because, you know, when you read the Bible and read the gospel, it's always something talking to you and you can relate to. So that's why for me, you know, aside from prep as a way for me to, you know, completely relax and become more present, it was a great way for me to know that, you know, like everything works out because God wills it for me. So that's why I wasn't caught up with winning anymore, because I was like, look, if God wills it, he does. If he doesn't, that's life. So what?
Yeah.
You know, like if he wants me to make $10 million before I'm 40, well, that's, you know, it's up to him. But if not, you know, like that's the way it is. So, you know, that's why also to being grateful of everything I've got, because like there's always someone out there that's doing worse than you, and they love what they're way more grateful than you too. So it's it's like that whole sin of greed. It's like we always want more. Yeah. And it gets to a point where it's actually not healthy for you, and you need to stop and smell the roses sometimes.
And remember the times you literally wished what you have now.
Of course.
That one really hits me, where if I'm ever down, but you got to also allow yourself to feel what you're feeling.
Definitely.
So it's like a balance between gratitude. Yeah, I'm grateful, but I got to always check myself to make sure my gratitude isn't me pushing down emotions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because I need to allow the feelings
Exactly.
of, you know, whatever it is happening in there.
Exactly. I completely agree.
Well, I love the religious talk. I was talking to a friend, a Christian friend, and he was kind of explaining to me just the concept and how much it's truly just changed his life.
Yeah.
And he's been Christian raised. He's always been Christian, in identity.
For sure.
And he was explaining only until 2 years ago that he really actually saw it for what it is, you know, in his experience. Well, how do you tackle though religion and your, if it's God's will, to what extent is anything your will?
Well, for me, it's more based upon, you know, when I want to achieve a goal, it's like, why am I doing this? It's like, for me, I'm always based, okay, like, well, for me, obviously God wants me to represent him through bodybuilding. So he's given me the gift and the genetics to do what I love to do. Yeah. And also to enjoy what I do. So for example, you know, I think that's a very important factor, because for me, I'm very driven upon the idea of that, you know, if something is meant to be, it will be.
Okay. Yep.
And yes, I think some people can be like, oh, why can you just have great genetics, you can do bodybuilding anyway and win and do this and that. I'm like, well, maybe, but for me, I wouldn't feel like I have the, I guess, not complacency. I'm trying to find the correct word for it. This is a really tough one to expand.
Yeah, that's all right. You're saying without the feeling of God's will, you wouldn't have a driving support, or why would you say complacency?
Not complacency, but you know, more so because a lot of people, you know, they would just rely on God to, like, oh, you know, I'm a Christian and that, and I'm good with achieving the goals that I want to achieve, and having that sort of that religious support spiritually. But I think for me, it empowers me.
Okay.
It empowers me as a person. So, you know, I'm very, very big on that basis, because when everything works out for people, it's very easy to stop being faithful to God and stop going to church. And I did that for a period of time. I felt very bad about myself. And I stopped praying as much. And, you know, because when we are in times of need, that's when we want God to be there for us.
Yeah.
But it's when everything works out is the hardest. It's like when anything works out for you, it's like you need to remember where you came from. So that's why for me, I try to really practice humility as much as I can, like humble in victory and humble in defeat, you know, because I used to act out with ego and be like, oh, you know, I want to prove this person wrong and fuck these people. And, you know, now on the other hand, it's more based upon like, well, you know, I just want to commit to myself and God and like my family and like my friends.
Well, that's the thing with God. You've allowed space for another. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you've now, just by nature of believing in God and having a religious mindset, you're by default now in a giving state. There's always another. You know what I mean? With your partner, you can give them the love that you give God as well. Yeah. And it just changes modes completely.
It does. It does. Yeah. So I think, and it also brought our relationship. It closened our relationship even more because I thought once we, you know, were engaged, that was the closest we could be, but we're even closer now as well because we're both Catholics. So, you know, and it brought us together even more. Like we're literally bound spiritually, you know, because if you get married and you're not religious, like I personally don't find much aside from legal purposes. I think, you know, it makes sense. But I think there's like, especially to being religious, there's this sort of this holy, ritual that's engaged upon with you literally being tied to your partner, you know? So I think that's why it's so important for me being a Catholic and getting married, because it's like, you know, my brother got married last weekend and he is a Greek Orthodox now. So, and he had a big Greek wedding. So
that's interesting.
Very full on, but you know, the way they conducted themselves throughout the ceremony was amazing. It was beautiful. And seeing sort of the steps required for them to become one was amazing. Yeah. So,
And there's a reason it's, you know, transcended time and across culture. It's because it has utility. There's a reason why it's here. You know?
For sure.
And I try not to. So I don't know where I land. I'm very was more religious, now slightly less. Appreciate religion more than anything. You know what I mean? So from my end, it's more I like to promote religion. From me though, I struggle to converse with God. Or I struggle to kind of truly fundamentally believe.
It makes
sense.
What I
mean?
Yeah.
So
do you feel like it's because you struggle to receive direction from it?
Yeah, and that's what my friend's like. He's like, have you asked God to reveal himself to you? He's like, have you? I'm like, no. I was
rookie mistake there.
There you go. Yeah. But to me as well, and on the inverse of what you were saying about, we only go to God on our lows. For me as well, I try not to because I don't constantly remind myself of God's presence. I don't like the idea of when I really need it or I'm on a real low, I turn to God.
But also too, I think it's fine to do that though, because some people when they are at their lowest points, they realize that God is the last thing left that they have. Because God forgives everyone, and that doesn't give us the ability to continue to sin and then be forgiven, knowing that we're always going to be forgiven. Because you can be a believer and think, just because I'm a follower of Christ, that's it. I'm going to go to heaven. I can do all the atrocities in the world and I will not be punished for that. Of course you will be. But I think it's more based on the premise of that our perfections are our imperfections. Like God made us to be imperfect, because being perfect, what are we able to learn from that? Nothing. So that's why when people say, oh, you know, like why is if this whole world and universe is made in God's image, why in a sense, like is all this bad stuff like occurring? Why, you know, there's all these wars, financial issues, and also too, you know, people can commit such atrocities. It's because God gave us the ability to choose, and He gave us the ability to learn from that, and also to knowing that at any moment in our life, no matter how much bad things we've done, one day we can be forgiven for those things. So, you know, and I think that's why, you know, again, it's a very tricky subject to navigate. Man. So that's why, of course, we have laws. But, you know, I think...
Wait, what do you mean? Sorry,
that's why we have laws.
Oh,
like,
I thought you said wars. I was like, no, wait a minute.
No way.
Yeah, I was ready to tackle that one.
You know, so that's why I think, you know, as as an individual who follows Christ, it's more based upon the values that I've been instilled, because that's why being a Catholic's so great, because, you know, it's the consistency of all the churches as well. So it's, you know, like we are shown the way of like how to conduct ourselves as a person, how to learn the lessons how to right our wrongs, how to also not live with regret and guilt, and sort of learn to let go and move on. Because, you know, Robert Greene, I love Robert Greene. He's just an incredible person. And, you know, he always talks about how it's good to face your weaknesses and face your fears and face your insecurities, because when you do that, you have strength in yourself. So when you open up yourself to Christ, excuse me, it's very important to completely open yourself up, because you're opening yourself up to love. And from that, you receive this type of love that you can't get from anyone. And you can feel it. Like, and that's why, going back to the premise of like, you struggle to converse with him, it's because maybe in your sense, you haven't, you believe that he's just going to talk to you like that. Like, for example,
not in my instance. No.
Yeah. So for example, for you, like you might think he might, you know, converse with you in a certain way, but for example, it might be in other ways. So
well, to me, when I'm, this is the part that gets me is, I don't, at this point in time, and this is where it comes down to, you only go there when you need it.
Yeah.
And that's why I try not to, though, is because to me, out of respect for God, I'm like, all right, I don't want to come to you to use you as a tool.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So out of respect for God, that's when I'm like, I've been acting like I can get through this alone. I need to continue going through whatever I'm going through alone. But in terms of like the religious in general in my life, I don't, in my experience, I guess I'm on a pathway and I believe I'm a good person without it being fundamentally ingrained in a religious kind of reasoning. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I haven't asked either to some degree, because I don't think do you get what I'm trying to say?
But if you were to flip the script though and say, okay, well, yes, like, you know, I haven't reached out to God at all. But even if you just did, like even when you're at your lowest points, would you feel better about it? Do you think you could?
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah, fair. Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like, well, you know, like that's why I think, you know, yes, it's a lot of people do reach out to God in times of need, but I also think as well that just because you think that you're reaching out to God in times of need, that you can't because you feel bad, but He forgives everyone.
Yeah,
He forgives everyone who believes in Him. So, you know, like at the end of the day, people can not go to church for a long time and they come back and they're forgiven. So that's why I think, you know, like the earlier you honor Him, like you're actually doing yourself a favor and doing God a favor as well.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's never too late.
Okay. I like that, man. I like that. But again,
there's hope for everyone. There's hope for everyone.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. But heart is always open. I'm always like appreciating hearing it as well. And I like people's stories as well as everyone. It seems unexplainable, the subjective experience that you get when the connection actually is made.
For sure.
So, I'm always open heart to it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really interesting subject. Yeah, I love talking about God a lot.
Me too, man.
It's great because, it's very interesting to see people's understanding and view on it. And I always love to talk to people about it, especially people who don't believe in God, who you know, who are just atheists. I think it's great. So I think it's always great to converse with people about it because communication and civil discourse provides a lot of lessons because, you know, at the end of the day, if you talk to someone with completely opposing views, you're not going to change their mind, but you're going to understand their point of view.
Exactly,
and understanding people's point of views makes sense. That's the whole point we're on this earth for, because you're not going to force someone to vote for Donald Trump. Like, no. You know, so, and that's why I think, you know, understanding people's certain opposing views is such a great thing to have.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to, you know, bettering our society.
Well, I think that's what's happening is because we're not having these conversations, we're now othering the other in a way that's like, wait, you're this like tribal enemy, and if you come to my family or whatever, you're gonna destroy this. It's like, no, just talk. And when you talk, you realize how much more in common we have.
For sure.
How much you are the person that's sitting in front of you.
Yep.
And they are you. And just by nature, I happen to be first person experiencing this conscious body.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But could have very much been,
100%.
you know, Jaxon and vice versa,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's full on, man.
it definitely is.
Yeah, I find it so interesting, the ballet. How did that even come along, man?
Yeah, it's
Was there judgment to that at the time, or was it more normal? Yeah, I love it. I think it's awesome, man. I think it's awesome.
it was, you know, because you know I've explained this multiple times on previous podcasts I've been on, but you know, essentially when I was young, you know, I always wanted to express myself in certain ways, and I found that through dancing and being I was a very artistic child, so for me, like ballet was something that I loved to enrich myself in because it was just such a great environment where I felt like I could really just express myself as a person. And so for me, from that, you know, I learned a lot of great valuable things, and especially at an early young age about like the notions of discipline, of hard work, and also to being creative and expressing yourself as an individual is really important. So I think that's why when it comes to, you know, the premise of like why I love doing ballet is because it was a cumulative factor of all those different things. So, you know, and it was just also too, I just love to dance.
Yeah,
love
fuck yeah.
to dance. It's great. Like, you know, also
Feeling
too, like
movement.
yeah. Well, you know, like, you know, when I was younger, you know, when I was at ballet school, there's only 20 of us guys and like 2,000 girls. And like, like every time, you know, like when the girls are there dancing, I'd be like checking them out as well.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
And they loved it that we could dance because, you know, when I used to show girls I could dance, like they loved it, you know. And I think as well though, just again, it goes into that slightly feminine side, expressing yourself in art, you know, because there's masculine and feminine energies with things from what I perceive. Some people might think it's not, like, you know. But I find with, you know, doing ballet, I loved it. I just love dancing. I love expressing myself. I love being on stage. I love performing, putting on a show for people.
Yeah.
That's why I love bodybuilding. That's why Classic Physique,
like the links,
where that, you know, that interplay from ballet moved over to in bodybuilding. And I think that's why when, you know, I'm able to go on stage and express myself, it's, you know, it's thoroughly me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that do bodybuilding, they just stand on stage, do like these robotic poses and yeah, it's fine. But like, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
I like being me. Like, because my whole life I was, you know, I never really had like many friends. And I always started to look at like, why is that the case? Like, is there something wrong with me? Because wait a second.
Maybe I'm the problem.
Yeah. So that's why over time I sort of looked at myself and I'm like, okay, well, you know, is it just because I'm a different individual or I'm not social? But, you know, I found that expressing myself and finding just that, yes, I was like a bit of a different person. I just like liked unconventional things compared to most people, like especially when I was young. I love ballet, dancing, and, you know, being creative and making like cool movies and stuff. And where everyone else my age just like playing sport and, you know, riding BMXs and scooters and shit. And that's fine, you know, but that just wasn't me. So that's why, you know, up until my age now, it's like, that's why I love bodybuilding because it's such a unique sport where you're presenting your unique self, you know, from head to toe, completely like nearly naked.
You
know, but like just wearing these little trunks. But
and it's a
you know,
good duality between masculine and feminine as well, because it has that. But even I don't even think dancing's too feminine. It has a communal connection element, which is kind of feminine, but
it goes both ways.
But
it's like, you know, hip hop is very, you know, masculine. Ballet is very slow, very elegant, very feminine. So, well, when I did ballet, actually, I did 3 types of dancing. I did contemporary, which is like, you know, you don't wear any shoes for that. It's very like free flowing. And then I did Russian character, which is very strong, very masculine, very powerful. And then I also did classical, which is more feminine and more elegant. So that's why when I do posing, for example, like people ask how I had such good stage presence, because when I do my bodybuilding poses, you know, like they're very masculine, very dominating on stage. But when it comes to like those free routines or doing classic, I'm able to have more elegance with it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I've always been someone who likes to move, you know. So.
Well, but yeah, and that's funny because like I don't know, where the boys in your age like, that's gay kind of thing. But the joke was on them. You're in a room full of 200 women and they're all just frothing you for being there. So you actually cracked the code real early.
I know.
Which is serious. Yeah, you cracked the code early of like whatever the like traditional masculinity thing is. You still get to be a traditional masculine man.
Exactly.
But by tapping into feminine, you're connecting with feminine.
Exactly.
You know what I
It was
mean?
great. It was great.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I think that's why as well, you know, when I was consistently called gay and a fag and all that kind of stuff for a long period of time, you know, that's why I left ballet, because I just couldn't take it anymore.
That's sad,
and,
man.
you know, then I moved into doing typical football and basketball.
Oh, that
and,
makes sense.
You know,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why it
yeah.
led me to being an athlete.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, but it's funny because I still will never forget those people that called me those names. You know, I forgive them, of course, but, you know, it's funny because, you know, I compete in a sport where I literally wear like a G-string almost, you know.
But that's all
like,
right.
yeah, but, you know, it's something I love doing. It's funny because then you're just like 110 kilos of lean shredded muscle on stage. But
Watching
you know,
other lathered men just
I know, all it up, you know, yeah, that's funny. Look, it's a great sport, but you know, I think that's why, like, you know, I wanted to be a professional ballet dancer, and I really wanted to, but you know, I'm glad though that I still did it because I'm still able to carry that over to what I love doing now, which is bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, that's like the that identity thing, that first time. And I think that's what happens when you're kids as well. You now hopefully, and I think I'm on the journey. I'm not fully there, but I'm leaning into my me. You know what I mean? I'm becoming more me and evolving into me.
Well, I think that's an important thing as well because, like, you know, I'm not sure if you might agree with this or not, but you know, again, it's very easy to create an identity upon who we are, and like that will shape the choices that we make, the way we conduct ourselves with what we wear, what we read,
Or
how
how
we
you
write.
should respond to something.
Exactly.
What music you should enjoy.
Exactly.
You
And
know?
so that's why I think, you know, I've always been very unconventional, and I've never allowed certain things, statuses, or the amount of money I have, or, you know, the relationships I've created or forged, sorry, not mended.
Or mended.
Oh, no. But, you know, into the way I am as a person. So, for example, when I tell people, oh yeah, you know, I love Warhammer 40,000, it's like, you're a fucking nerd, bro.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this?
You know, you'd expect a bodybuilder to be someone who'd be like, oh, you know, I listen to gangster rap music on the way to the gym, and you know, I train
I
hard.
don't give
and
a fuck.
yeah, bro, you know. So, but I'm not like that. I'm just like, just me. I just like enjoy my life. It's like, even if I had no muscle, I'd still be who I am today.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, we're a
But
new generation, man. But I think on these individual, I 100% agree with that. But we kind of, and especially you being I hate the term, but public figure, which you are, people's eyes are on you. People are looking up to you as well.
Yep.
If you're driving that as well, and this is me unapologetically,
Yeah.
we're helping on an individual level,
Yep.
you know, change society for the better in that
For
way.
sure. Yeah.
You know?
And that's what I think a lot of people look at, like, you know, oh, you know, they have a very pessimistic mindset of like, oh, I can't impact or influence people, especially when you're young. It's like, you know, I like how Simon Sinek, who's a very, very famous, not entrepreneur, but also too, you know, he inspires a lot of people to do great stuff. He's very, like, I would love to meet him one day. He inspired me a lot. And he talks about, you know, when young people are in companies, in big companies, they're like, oh, you know, like after they're there for like, you know, not long, and they tell him like, oh, you know, I want to leave the company. It's like, well, why? It's like, oh, I've made any impact. He's like, been here for like 6 months. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, stuff like this takes time. You know, so
And that's
you
on
know,
a kind
getting-
of sorry.
Oh, sorry. You know, just quickly, and then also too, you know, getting to where I am today. That was 7 years of work. You know, so it's like the whole like the whole understanding of like, you know, it takes a long time to build a foundation for yourself. Like it took me a long time to start influencing and trying to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
But at first, you know,
And
when I just
that
started
knowledge.
training, when I just started training, I was able to help friends in high school. You know, I'd do like, I did online coaching before online coaching was a thing. And so that's why for me, I was able to help my friends get in shape for formal, for like valedictory, for, you know, for this party, to be in shape for this girl, for the beach, you know. And that's why for me, you know, you start small, you do what you can, and then over time it expands, you know. But if you're capped out at a certain amount of people you can help, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, you know, there is a lot of bad in this world and a lot of evil, but there is also a lot of good. And you can add, you know, just like that 0.1% of good.
Exactly.
It can overtake a lot of bad things in life.
Hopefully, man.
Yeah.
And I guess you realized your value in what you were doing and how people will pay for it, you know?
For sure.
Which is great that we're in
and
a
that's the
society
thing as well. You know, for me, it was like, you know, again, going back to how God communicates to me, he communicates to me through what my heart feels and also to my visions of like when I dream. So, when I dream, I envision things and I'm like, okay, well, if I continuously see this, I believe this is what God wants me to do, and also to the way you feel about something. If you feel passion and you feel that love for something, that's, in my opinion, that is also God also speaking to you. That's how he speaks to me. He doesn't tell me exactly what to do, but he shows me what the destination looks like, but he doesn't show me how to get there. And that's the biggest thing, is knowing in life how to, take the path, because it's like, just take the first step. Because I think it's great being shown that end journey, but also too, the beauty of it is that you don't know anything that's going to happen along that journey, which is a crazy wild ride.
Yeah, and when we're in masculine mode, that's when, you are leader, you are decision maker, you are wearing the brunt of the family as well. I 100% believe that. But that's why when you are speaking to God, you can't be leader masculine mode.
No.
You need to be feminine receptive to the energy that's coming to you.
For sure.
And, absorbing, taking it in. And only that way can you hear the calling of your heart.
Yeah.
To now switch masculine on to go.
Open yourself up.
Literally, which that's linked to these concepts of feminine and masculine. You know?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a point I was going to make, I jumped on earlier, was I feel like, and I don't want to get into politics, but I just kind of want to get it out there. But let's go there. No, I just kind of want to get it off, is because you mentioned the job example where 6 months in, they're like, why isn't blah, blah, blah happening?
Yeah.
That's like similar to what we're experiencing as a society, where a lot of like younger people are like, socialism, communism is the way to go. This you guys don't know. You're all stupid. Fuck the rich. But it's like, you know how hard they work to get rich? You know what I mean? Like these old white rich men, all right, sure, I'm sure there's an in-group and we can change a lot about society.
For sure.
Like there's things that we can take from a hyper-liberal mindset.
Exactly.
But and I'm for that. But the mindset of like, we should penalize accruing money, and people who have money and worked for it now want to pass it to their kids. We should say that's a bad thing.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like you got to work for the thing. So
I think it's, I like having conversations with people who have different, mindsets upon what I believe. And, I remember talking to someone and they're very big on communism. Like, fair enough. You got some really good points.
There's great points for communism.
I also said to them, I said, well, look, like if you enjoy, like if you really want to live under communist society, like why don't you like move to a communist country? Because if you're explaining all the points at why you like something, you should be involved in it, And I think that's a good one to ask people. For example, it's like if they love Donald Trump, it's like, well, why don't you move to America? If he's president, and then it's like it makes people realize like, oh, interesting, because I think, we are very important in changing society the way it should be, and also providing points onto why something should be changed. But also too, as well, history is a great thing because we can learn from mistakes, so, and I think though,
bless that.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why I really do love talking to people about different points, because I just believe in a free society where people can converse with others about opposing opinions. So I'm very big on that.
A lot of people don't realize though, is like the very system that allows you to criticize a system won't be allowed in another system.
Usually, sometimes, for sure.
So like you can't talk badly of our Lord and Savior, Xi Jinping, like you have to, praise only example. Whereas these same people that are just saying, fuck democracy or whatever, fuck whatever is going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're a Liberal or Labor, or if you're for the Greens, or if you're for the One Nation Party, or Clive Palmer, like at the end of the day, like, we all have our freedoms to express what we believe politically and socially. Yeah. And that's what makes our country so great.
Yeah. I'm just so disenfranchised now where I'm just like, nothing matters, which is bad mentality to have. But
you always got to be open to again, it's the whole premise of like understanding people's point of view. That's what will make our society better. Yeah, not trying to change people's minds. Well, you can, and sometimes you might. Yeah, but most of the time you won't.
And I think it's by not trying.
For sure. Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is just my experience. These are the things that have helped me.
Yep.
This is what I think may help you if you want to take not even advice. God forbid I use the word advice. It's just thoughts. But
for sure.
Yeah. Creatine. Is this a PED? What is that? What does
Nah.
that fall under? Okay.
Protein's a fully legal supplement, bro.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
literally just an amino acid that helps with energy production at rest.
Okay.
So like, did you study like much like biochem and stuff?
I know ATPs are the energy
Yeah.
things.
It just helps with increasing the ATP reproduction when it's depleted in between training when you're resting.
I fucking nailed that, and you nailed that.
Yeah.
Good.
There you go.
Is that it though?
That's literally it.
I thought it can create a level of ignorance here, aggression to some degree, or
Not at all.
No.
No.
Okay.
That's what
Interesting.
PEDs like steroids will do.
Oh yeah. Okay.
If it affects you neurologically in your brain.
Yeah.
But no.
All right.
Not like protein powder and like creatine and stuff. And
All
food.
right.
No, for sure not.
Well, then what are some PEDs do's and don'ts? What's your take on just the conversation?
Interesting
around
question.
It?
Obviously it's something I would never ever recommend for anyone to do.
Okay.
And look, at the end of the day, though, people are going to do what they want. So, that's different. That's why we live in a free society. People are usually free to do whatever the hell they want. But, I think when it comes to, these kind of things, like, it's really interesting because, for example, it's like you get that common question of like, like I'm thinking of doing this, I'm thinking of doing that. It's like when you start messing with your hormonal function, that's when things get very serious because you're not taking protein powder, you're not eating food. Like, this is like just as important as like, anything it's a very, very controversial topic because people think if they just take some testosterone, they can put on 30, 40 kilos of muscle and then they're all set. Doesn't work like that. Like, and also too, like there are risk and health complications with doing stuff like that as well because, at the end of the day, it's a class A drug. So that's why as well, like, especially too in our modern society of like TikTok and Instagram, I see a lot of people like in their early 20s, like thinking, oh, I want to jump on steroids. I want to take SARMs. Like, no, like, you're still developing as a person, and when you're starting to, alter your pharmacology and hormonal system in your body, like on an endocrine level, you start to also affect the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you look, and also the way your body's functioning. You're literally like slightly altering the body's function. Yeah. So, like I think a lot of people lack also the knowledge and educational research of like repercussions of abusing things like that because, we always talk about, don't smoke. It develops lung cancer and like mouth cancer and tobacco, and also the negative effects as well, like what alcohol can do, where your liver enzymes can elevate to the point where your liver is not going to function as effectively anymore because it's almost a filtration system for everything that's toxic. So people think, oh yes, if I just do this, I just take that, I'm gonna build muscle. Like, yeah, you might if you're training and eating a conducively effective diet to sufficiently build muscle tissue and train. But it's at the end of the day, like if you're just trying to think about just taking steroids, like you're in a completely wrong mindset of like why you should train. And like I know plenty of natural athletes that look incredible. They've been natural their whole life. I've a opposing client and he's 32, 33. And he looks incredible. Nice. Amazing. And he competed in IFBB. He looks amazing.
Oh, wow.
And, I have absolutely the utmost respect for natural athletes because, they're training and they're dieting even harder than before than what even some enhanced guys I know do. So, and that's why I think, I would never ever give advice on things like that where I don't have the, like educational data to. Like, for example, like I would ask more of an endocrinologist of like, okay, if I ever wanted to do something like this, what would I do? It's like talking to, a dietitian or a certified nutritionist, like under a governing body of like what the advice should be. Yeah. That's why I have a coach. That's also why I'm a coach for, Gen Pop athletes. I coach people who just want to get in shape, because I'm qualified under that field, So if I want to become specialized, that's different. So that's why also too, in this coaching industry, a lot of people can just get on stage as well as a bodybuilder and say, hey, I'm a coach now. No. You need to have the skin in the game on a effective physical level of actually undergoing the process, but also to an educational skill level where you're actually qualified under a governing body and you have the necessary requirements of knowledge to actually, again, extrapolate that information and essentially give it to someone to follow.
Yeah. So the subjective experience of knowing it, so you can actually relate to them while they're going through
Of
it.
course,
And then the data to actually be like,
Yeah.
here's the graph.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why when people say, hey, why should I do, only 1 to 2 working sets on an exercise rather than 5? Well, it's like, well, you're at a certain point where essentially, 2 working sets, you're going to be more effective at driving intensity and driving load and, receiving a greater stimulus. So they're also as well, more metabolites will, function. So therefore you can build more muscle tissue and you can also break down more fibers. You're getting stronger. Mechanical tension drives muscle tissue to grow.
Yeah.
Compared to just saying, oh, I'm just gonna do like 5 sets of this and just dick around on a movement, do like, fuck all intensity. Like, yeah, you might drive the volume up, but at the same time as well, one, from a time consumption perspective, you're there for like 20 minutes on a machine. Like people don't have 20 minutes to be on a movement unless you're a powerlifter, you've got all the time in the world. Or 2, like you're actually going to be in the gym for too long and you can actually develop rhabdo because you're actually breaking down muscle tissue. You actually utilize it and synthesize it for energy, which is what you don't want.
Yeah.
And 3 as well,
So it's like we're dying here.
Well, yeah, literally, I know someone that got rhabdo and it was really bad. Like when people get rhabdo, it's very, very bad. Like that's really not good. A lot of people who who have extreme amounts of famine develop rhabdo. It's like all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and essentially, also too, you're actually going to, you're providing less intensity as well. So that's why, having less working sets is going to be a lot more effective. It's like, imagine going into a store, you got 20 grand, you're not going to spend, $5 on each thing, to get as much as you can. Like you're going to say, no, I want to maximize my money and time. I've got 30 minutes to be in here. I'm going to drop 5 grand on a nice TV, and provide, like, it's almost like the ROI. So like the rate of interest that you get back from it. So, the rate of investment, because, I can, do 20 sets of, or 10 sets of leg press all day, but like, I'm gonna get to a point where like, I'm just exceeding so much of that movement pattern where I can actually do other movements where I'm actually going to be targeting more the stretch position in the, in the bottom or at the top, so
diminishing returns.
And that as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's that point where you're just.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting stuff.
And with the testosterone, it feels like you touched on it. It's the kind of bars moving further where younger and younger kids are talking about it.
Yeah.
That's where my qualm with it gets, where it's like, and social media, of course, but now it's pushing it down for them. And it's like, I guess they don't understand the multifaceted effects that all pillars that you need to have in place for it to actually happen.
Well, it's like, ego lifting. It's like when you're young, you feel great. You can do anything in the world. And then once you start to slowly age, then you realize the repercussions of your effects when you're young. So
you tweak that back that one.
I've
fucking done that. Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. So that's why, again, doing everything as effectively as possible, because over time you start to look at, okay, I can get this big in this amount of time. It's more about, okay, how can I do this as long as possible? Like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's why the sport is very important, because a lot of people only look at the next 1 to 2 years, or when's the next show, when's the next off season, when's the next cut, when's the next session, when's the next weight I can lift, when's the next, meal. Like, we don't look at long term what we're doing to our body. So that's why, making sure you're being smart and making informed decisions and saying, okay, well, if I'm making this decision, what's the repercussion of that? What's the repercussion of me getting under a 400 kilo squat? Very, very bad. Most of the time, you're probably going to tear your quads off. So why don't you just do a machine, do a hack squat variation or something where, you can focus on driving the load and you don't need to balance the load as well.
Yeah. Well, isn't there a benefit to balancing? It adds like a level of dynamic stability as well.
Not necessarily, because, in bodybuilding, when people say what's the difference between a free weight and a machine, it's like, well, long story short is free weights are great to develop a lot more stability and also muscle tissue as well and strength. But also at the same time, the opposite end of the spectrum, like as a bodybuilder, we're trying to drive as much hypertrophy as we can. So we can get more work in on a machine for essentially the same work we put in for a leg press. So if we get, like a barbell squat, not a leg press, my bad.
Sorry, I'm with you.
So for example, let's say I do 220 kilos, 5 plates aside on a barbell squat for 10 reps. That's, like 2,200 kilos of total tonnage. Let's say I do that now on a hack squat. Because instead of having a free weight on me, I'm not going to fatigue myself as much. So now with 5 plates aside, I can do a set of 15 or 20. That's an extra two. I've just doubled almost my overall volume within the same period of time.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, you
okay,
see what I
yeah,
mean?
Yeah.
So, and there's also been like, they've had a lot of the literature also shows, you know, through like meta-analyses, like multiple studies that have been concluded together, that essentially, you know, weight training in free weights and in machines, there's not much difference. So, you know, so you look at also like the injury, like the harm reduction of risk of injury on a machine, usually going to be a lot lower than a free weight.
Yeah.
So, but also implementing free weights is definitely paramount in building muscle tissue as well. Like I do a lot of free weight movements as well, but also do a lot of machine movements as well. And it helps.
Just switching it up. Yeah.
Not switching it up. It's more about having the correct amount of, you know, like I'm not going to do as many free weights on big compound movements because I want to just make sure to drive intensity and not have to focus on, oh my gosh, I need to balance this weight when I'm squatting or when I'm pulling.
I really thought that was like a core part. I had no idea that. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah.
Like, yes, it's also cool to be strong, but you don't need to be strong to be a great bodybuilder.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just about like how hard you're working. Yeah.
Does it add a level of aggression? Is that a part of the? Is that a staple kind of byproduct of taking PEDs as well, or is that just an assumption?
Everyone's different.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
like, you know, again, like if someone's going to take something, like they're usually going to have a specific neurological function differently to someone else. So it's like, for example, saying, oh, you know, I have a friend that's drunk and, you know, he's great to be around. He's super funny, just cracks jokes all the time. Then I have another friend who he starts taking some alcohol. This man's abusive as fuck.
The domestics coming out.
Yeah. So, and that's why, again, everyone's different, understanding like, you know, people like operate differently on a mental spectrum, like to other people. So that's usually probably the best analogy I can give to people. Like it's, you know, people who want to dabble in that kind of stuff, it's, you know, it's not good for you.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. To me, the last thing I need is to be more horny. So I'm just like,
Eat more good food, sleep well, hydrate.
Yeah, I don't need that. Is what I'm saying. Like, all right, so I just don't want. I'm like, I don't need another level of just fucking aggression. So it's like I'm just gonna pass on it.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you reckon? I understand this is not medical advice. I get that. I appreciate that. But my process was always, or my thought process was, if I hit like as soon as my testosterone starts to dip, which I assume is early 30s or whatever. I thought that would be a good time to take it as like another up, a second wind.
Not necessarily. Like a lot of people will take, you know, like after 30, usually 30 can be from even young as 25, even like some people from 40 onwards. It's roughly about a 1% decrease per year after 30. So by the time someone's 50, if their blood testosterone level is, you know, let's say it's 4 millimoles per deciliter, and like the average is from 15 millimoles to 29 millimoles per deciliter, that's a normal range. Let's say now let's say, you know, it's actually not at a consistent level where, you know, normal hormonal function is occurring. So there's some side effects from that. So, you know, energy can drop, overall vigor can decrease, your recovery is also hindered. You can also have some potentiality of like risk of joint pain. Even irritability, low sex drive.
Sorry,
a lot
just
of these things.
to clarify, are you saying if you take it later in life?
No. If you have low testosterone naturally.
Okay.
Yeah. These are usually the common side effects.
I understand. Yeah.
So usually people, what they'll do is when they're older, start to then realize, okay, well, you know, I'm not able to produce as much testosterone as, you know, what I could when I was 20. So that's why a lot of people start, you know, actually getting medical injections from doctors, or, you know, they'll be prescribed testosterone. So, and that makes sure that they can maintain a healthy level of hormonal function in their body, not to just improve their quality of life, but also as well improve other areas of their lifestyle. So that's why I think, you know, like for example, you know, my dad, he has like the most amazing natural testosterone levels I've ever seen in blood work in someone. And I'm like, you wouldn't have to touch something like that in 20, 30 years, man. Wow. So, you know, a lot of people as well, when they're young, like 21-year-olds, like, oh, you know, I want to jump on TRT. It's like, you're literally like at the peak of your life.
Yeah, you don't need to replace any testosterone.
Why are you replacing it? It's just an excuse for them to start jumping on gear.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just, you know, what social media and just, you know, terrible misinformation from people and misleading information has given to these younger kids, this generation, so messed up.
Yeah.
You know? And you know, when I was 17, 18, you know, I didn't even know what steroids were. I just knew that like people would just train and do bodybuilding. Like I never knew this at the time, you know. And then after like 2021, I realized that you know people do take steroids. Even like high level pro athletes in other sports do.
Yeah.
You know, but obviously, you know, not as high amount as like a Mr. Olympia would be taking when they abuse it a lot. You know, so everyone's different.
Yeah. So do you get asked that question a lot, or like especially in your coaching? Do people ask you, or your clients, do they want your advice on that stuff?
Usually no. Like, you know, I'm very against the premise of like coaching people who, you know, who want to take PEDs because a lot of the time they're not process-driven individuals.
Okay, interesting.
You know, so I only coach naturals. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I like that, man.
Yeah. So I think like, you know, when it comes to if someone has a choice of like saying, you know, I want to take PEDs, it's like, well, look, you know, I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But you are free to do whatever you want because at the end of the day, no one's going to stop you. But I think that's why, you know, if someone's ever going to make a decision like that, they need to have the advice of a professional.
Yeah.
Or someone who's like, you know, let's say if they're a sports endo, they can give great advice on if someone is justified in what they want to, if they want to do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's very interesting stuff. So, you know, yeah. So.
I've been asked a few times, like, if I'm like, why don't you take it? You should jump on it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, but this is not any time recently, but definitely over time. Well, firstly, I think there's no bigger compliment than, are you on gear? I'm like,
yeah, well, when I was like a teenager, when I was in high school, people said, oh, you know, like, sure, you're taking stuff.
Yeah,
you're taking stuff. I'm like, no, really? Like,
no, but say it more, please.
yeah.
But yeah, my mindset, you kind of hit it there, which is kind of, I would want to peak. I'd want to cap out first 100% before I even potentially consider anything.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Whereas people are using that as their baseline.
Yeah.
That's the external. That's that externalization where it's not coming from the core.
It is. Yeah. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Is there a certain type of client you kind of have? Is there what's the client, you know, coach relationship?
Most people I like taking people on board who are always open to learning. So if someone has a very dogmatic sense of personality, I'm not very big on that. So when I actually onboard clients, like I do what my coach did to me, and I actually get people to do a personality quiz.
Awesome.
So, you know, like the Gretsch Rubin 12 question for four different personalities are very important. So you got like the upholder, you also got the rebel, the questioner, and then there was one more. I keep forgetting. But essentially, you know, it gets me to also get a greater understanding of what someone's like, you know, because I don't want to coach people who are very set in their ways. I like to coach people who are also open to learning new information. And also as well, you know, they are also very process-driven individuals. I don't coach people say, oh, you know, I want to be this way. I want to be this lean. Yes, goal setting is important, but you're missing the whole understanding of like why you're wanting to achieve a goal. So that's for me probably the biggest pointers of like the main people I want to coach. Like, you know, I've actually stopped, like I've actually like told people like, look, I don't think we're a good fit. I'll recommend you to this coach, or I'll just say, look, we're not a good fit. Sorry. You know, so I'm just pretty straight to the point and like, everyone's different, but
because it's a relationship between you two. Yeah,
it is for sure.
It's like a marriage almost for like the for that period.
You're signing a contract, man, to be under me. So yeah, there you go.
Call me daddy.
Yeah, for sure.
No, it's fair enough, man. That makes complete sense.
Exactly. So yeah, and also I'll just never give advice on areas where I don't have the unquestionable proof and data. So, you know, for me as an athlete, like I can give unquestionable data and proof to people who, you know, want to obviously go down that endeavor. And also as well, that's why I love coaching Gen Pop clients, man. They're just so chill and easygoing, and they're really good at embracing, you know, when shit gets hard. There's a lot of athletes that I know that are just, you know, they don't have the mindset of what, you know, an athlete should be, where they embrace the challenges. They sort of look at it like, oh, I'll make this as easy as possible. I don't want it to be hard. I'm just not going to, you know, go against the grain at all. It's
I just want to look like you without the effort.
Yeah. And when people say, like tell me that, I sort of laugh a bit. I'm like, you know, I remember, oh man, I had someone come up to me and told me they're competing, and they're like, oh, you know, I just hate it. You know, I don't enjoy it. And I was just looking at them like, no wonder why you're not going to probably do another prep ever again, because you just don't enjoy the process. Yeah. Like, you know, and that's not a bad thing, but I don't feel sorry for people who put themselves in situations where they're sorry for themselves. And so that's why for me, when I pulled out 3 times in a row from competing, I just stopped telling people why I didn't enjoy it. I just told myself I don't enjoy it, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, someone said to me, hey, why'd you stop competing? I'm like, well, I just didn't enjoy it. So why would I continue to do something I don't enjoy?
Yeah.
So now I love competing. So I tell people I love it because I enjoy it. You know what I mean? So it's again, I think a lot of people just, you know, how do I word this? A lot of people, surprisingly, place themselves in positions where they don't want to be, but they choose to do it.
Which can sometimes be a good growth thing, but then
Not for everyone.
Not for everyone, yeah.
No. So that's why, again, I just have zero remorse for people though who place themselves in situations where, you know, they're gaining the repercussions and the consequences of it. So it's like if someone wants to get to like 3% body fat and they don't like doing that, you chose to do that and you can stop at any moment. You can go up the road and go to McDonald's and eat what you want. Yeah. You can stop training. So why are you complaining? You know, it's okay to say, oh, you know, like this sucks sometimes. Like it's okay to, you know, again, be fairly emotional, but understand that you have a job to do. And that's why for me, I was very in touch with my emotions. Like there were times where I did cry and I broke down a bit. I'm like, this is just so hard. Like this is so hard. But then I sat there, I'm like, you know what? The job has to be done.
Yeah. You know, it's going to do itself. Yeah.
Again, having that savant mentality mixed with that feminine energy of like being in touch with emotions. Because this is why women are so good at, I think women are amazing at competing in bodybuilding federations like bikini and like, you know, wellness and all that kind of shit, because they are able to express their emotions and, you know, say what they want about it. But then after that, it's like they just get straight to work. Guys in there, they just do the work and they don't explain and talk about their emotions, and then they just bottles them up, they blow up, and then they don't do it. You know?
Or implode, yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I think, you know, also women have more valuable relationships with people because they're more open to expressing their emotions. Guys, on the other hand, I know guys that I've never seen ever talk about their emotions, and I'm like, how do you operate as a human? Like, I'm sorry, but you know, if you don't have any emotions at all, like it just shows for a fact that, you know, you aren't in touch with who you are as a person.
Yeah, you're not a total human being.
Putting on a persona.
You know, yeah, because even passion and aggression are synonymous as well. So if you're able to be passionate about things and embody that feminine in your masculine aggression, you're able to really embody that emotion as well. So it's a dichotomy. You got to be able to dive into everything.
Yeah, definitely.
As a coach, then, how do you distinguish or kind of how do you distinguish whether someone is using your motivation and you've become their source and that's a bad thing, or whether you're, as a coach, motivating them to keep going?
Well, I wouldn't say, you know, I am there to support people, but also I'm not there. Like, I'm there to guide them, but I'm not there to physically make them do it. So I'm very harsh with my clients, and I'm just honest. Like, I can tell if someone's not working hard. Okay. I can just tell. And, you know, that's fine because people only know how hard they can work from what they've been shown. So that's why I love to lead from the front as an athlete, because it shows, hey, this is how hard I work. Hopefully you can work as hard as this. Then also too, you know, for me, it's still on. And then also too, you know, I actually love to train with people who train harder than me, for example. Like, there's very few of them, but there are people out there. And, you know, I like to train that hard as well. So, you know, it's almost like the consistency effect of where, like, there's always a rate of progression to improve. And that's what I'm really big on educating my clients to do. Yeah. Because, you know, you can give the greatest plan in the world, but if you can't get them to do it, they're not going to do it. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Simple as that. Yeah. You know, so you got to understand that this is the intention of why we do this. This is what we're going to be doing, and this is what I require from you. So,
so is it a pattern thing where if it happens for X amount, you're like, all right, you're not in this the way I am anymore? So is there
I sort of look at like the tendencies of like people have behaviors for a certain reason. So people have behaviors where it's very important to look at. It's like their eating behaviors, their social behaviors, their training behaviors, their, you know, work-life behaviors. So it all has an interplay. Yeah. And if it's not conducive to the plan, I take a look back and say, okay, well, why are we not able to follow the plan? Like, what's the reason why? So then instead of being like and demonizing someone, saying, oh, you went off your diet, you did this, you did that, you know, instead of punishing them, saying, hey, okay, so why did it cause you to do that? Like, what was the reason? And then bang, like straight away we get down to the bottom of it, and then they're fine.
Yeah, so you end
Like,
up becoming not just a body coach, but you're entering their psyche as well. What are your drives?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, because not everyone can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It is.
Good, man. It's full on, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
How do you maintain your motivation? Does yours drop off sometimes? Is there...
I'm not motivated, man. I'm just disciplined.
Okay,
I just love what I do. I
Yeah.
love what I do, and it's like a lifestyle for me. I just train every day. I love eating my meals, doing my steps.
Yeah, yeah.
Same old shit.
Yeah, awesome.
And it's great, you know, and until I stop enjoying it, of course, I'll be like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I think I'll train every day until I'm dead.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You come from a athletic family, right?
I do.
Did that play a role in your identity as a kid, expectations growing up, and who you've become today?
Yeah, for sure. It did. It really, a lot of the time, I always try to be like my older brother, who was an incredibly good athlete, played for VFL for Carlton. He always did like top level athletics, and he was always just such a great athlete. And for me, you know, I was like a very like fat kid after I did ballet, and I was like just very unattractive. I had like crooked teeth and shit, and hated that. And you know, essentially when I was younger, like I always just wanted to be someone who could, you know, make my parents proud. And for me, you know, even though they were always proud of what I did, I always just wanted to, how do I explain it? You know, not live in the shadow of my brother, because more so be like him, because I saw, you know, how much attention he was getting from people for being good at what he did. And again, it was for the wrong reasons. So, you know, being an athletic family was not a bad thing, but also too, you know, over a period of time, I just didn't want to be a one-dimensional person. I didn't want to just be an athlete. Like, you know, like anyone can be an athlete after a period of time. So for me, it was more like, I just want to be a good person.
Yeah, okay, nice. And was a part of that because he's kind of taken athlete identity, a part of that had to be like, all right, I need to be multifaceted because I don't want to take him head on.
Not really. Well, after, you know, after he played footy, he's like, I just want to enjoy my life and, you know, I want to get married and all that. And I was like, damn, like, you know, he's not one dimensional. Like, and it made me realize, like, I can't just be a bodybuilder. I cannot, like, because without it, who am I? I'm nobody. So that's why for me, I always found that being a one-dimensional individual was just like the most disadvantageous thing that you could do as a person.
100%.
In my opinion. You can be great at something, that's okay, but Elon Musk, for example, isn't just the richest man in the world, or just because he owns Tesla and that, like, and not because, you know, he can create, you know, data software and for IT. You know, he's probably good at a lot of other things.
Yeah.
He likes video games. He likes Rick and Morty. He likes a lot of other things, and he's probably good at a lot of other things too. So that's why I think, yes, you can be great at one thing, but it doesn't mean you are one-dimensional. Though.
Yeah. And if you place all your value in that one thing you think people value you for, what happens when you lose it?
Exactly.
You know, where do you go from there? Who are you at that point?
It's like when people say, oh, you know, I've got heaps of money. It's like, but that's all you've got.
Yeah.
You don't have anything else.
You're taking it to you in your grave, you know? Where's it go there? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why when people like reach their deathbed, like, you know, they don't look at the achievements that they've made. They look at the relationships and the quality of value of relationships that they've formed with people. That's why, again, when I won those shows, the people I shared it with was even more special than winning it.
Yeah, that's incredible.
You know, and I loved it. It was great. It was absolutely incredible. I'll never forget that day in my life.
Jaxon, thank you so much, man. You're clearly a force for good, man. And
thank you.
In like a ever more saturated market and just densely, you know, everything's happening.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have people with a strong message out there. So honestly, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
On the show today.
It was great. I love talking about different things. It's probably the most you know, in-depth podcast I've ever really been on.
Oh,
you know,
awesome, man. Awesome.
It doesn't just focus on fitness. So
yeah,
I love that.
All the more reason, I guess we really got to see that you are multifaceted. So there's so many places to grab onto there, man.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
No, it's all right. Now, where do you go to get your wisdom from? What's that look like for you?
Aside from my pastor at St. John's, Father Disman, shout out.
Shout out to
legend. Aside from that, my fiance and like just usually for me, it's like just look at people who have influenced a lot of others for good and, you know, do as they say and do as they do.
Jaxon, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Peace. Ooh, yes, we got it.